I'd like to introduce our host and psychotherapist for their series, I Am Not Okay, Kim Christing. Kim is the founder and executive director of Bay Ridge Counseling Centers and Human Strong, which is part of the Bay Ridge Circle of Care. He is an author and creator of several mental health programs in the area of mood disorder and anger management. For several years, Kim hosted a call-in national talk show called Nightlight and has appeared on numerous national talk shows speaking to the issues of mental health and relationships. Over his 40-year career, Kim has intimately worked with thousands of individuals, couples, and families to help navigate the challenges of mental, emotional, and relational health. Please welcome Kim Christing.
Well, thank you, Amy. Let me introduce you to our guest. Jan Arden is a multiple Juno Award-winning singer and songwriter. Her melancholy yet hopeful adult contemporary pop songs, distinguished by her expressive vocal delivery and introspective lyrics, earned her an international following in the 1990s and 2000s. Jan also works as an actor with her starring role in Jan, a comedy television series on a fictionalized version of her own life. The series premiered in March 2019. At the 8th Canadian Screen Actors Award in 2020, Jan received a nomination for Best Actress in a Comedy Series. She won 2 Canadian Screen Awards in 2021 for Best Host in the Talk Show or Entertainment News Show for her 2019 special Jan Arden One Night Only, and Best of Live Entertainment Event for her role as host of the 2019 Giller Prize ceremony. Our second guest is Ryan Shore. Ryan is a 2-time Emmy Award and Grammy Award nominated composer, songwriter, music director, and conductor for film, television, virtual realities, records, concerts, events, and theater. Shore was assistant music director and contributing composer, arranger, orchestrator for the 87th Academy Awards, where he worked with artists including Lady Gaga, Adam Levine, Anna Kendrick, Tim McGraw, Jack Black, Neil Patrick Harris, and Jennifer Hudson. Shore's 75-plus scoring credits include Star Wars Forces of Destiny, Star Wars Galaxy of Adventures, The Not Too Late Show with Elmo, Love Guaranteed on Netflix, Scooby-Doo, WWE, Curse of the Speed Demon through Warner Brothers, not to forget Sesame Street, and most recently additional music for the Lin-Manuel Miranda movie musical, In the Heights, from Warner Brothers. Well, welcome, guys. What a privilege to have you both here today. You both bring such a wealth of experience and successes, and I'm so excited to have a conversation with you today. However, we're inviting you to step back behind the curtain of your stage life and share with us what it's like to be Jan and Ryan when no one else is watching. And our topic is on smoke and mirrors. And I'm going to introduce this concept of how we have hide behind so many things. But someone has suggested if you asked a group of 3-year-olds who is the fastest runner or the smartest kid, most kids in the class would raise their hand, me. But 4 years later, you ask that same group of now 7-year-olds, they will say, oh, that's Johnny or that's Kristen. In 4 short years, they began to compare themselves to others and judge themselves based on strength, success, and who's the best at something. But in turn, they tend to hide their failures, their fears, and their weaknesses. And so we're kind of turning the page to look into this whole concept of how our society tends to celebrate strength and to honor success, and unfortunately, to hide shame through shame, failure, weaknesses, and vulnerability. So guys, I want to jump right in the deep end today. And I guess the very first question, has there ever been a time in your life where you looked in the proverbial mirror and not liked the person that looked back at you? Tough question.
Yeah. I will say yes. I will jump in right away and
Thanks,
say,
Ron.
of course, absolutely. I feel as though I feel as though I'm a constant work in progress, and constantly, looking in the mirror, the proverbial mirror, and assessing what I see and what I feel is working, from a success standpoint, from a personal standpoint, and constantly feeling as though there are adjustments to be made and work to be done.
Okay, good. And any other thought, Jan?
I was never one of those people that was too hard on myself. I certainly have had my moments. I think that didn't come till later on in my 20s when I just didn't like letting myself down. It was mostly attached to drinking too much,
right,
for many, many years, and just constantly canceling luncheons or appointments with people. I just was constantly kind of going back on my own commitments to people. And it was the one thing that really I couldn't handle. But it wasn't so much about physical attributes or not liking the face that I was looking at. I was gladly one of, millions of women that are very, very hard on themselves growing up. There's nothing right about their bodies. And even now, sort of with social media the way it is, I think for young women in particular, it's a very difficult time. But no, I was very fortunate to have a really great mom who was always cheering me on. So, but yeah, I know that it's a catastrophic problem out there. It really is. And
when you have spoken quite a bit, Jan, about the addiction to alcohol, and there was a comment. I love the comment that I think you said that you are you're supercharged when you're sober, and you love that part of yourself, and that's your superpower or whatever. Why did you need alcohol if you felt that strength within yourself?
Way too complicated for me to even fathom answering that. I have no idea. My dad handed it to me like a $20 bill. I come from a long line of drunks. So there is absolutely a genetic disposition that I walked into. I was in a house with a father who was a raging alcoholic. I lived with, him. So just seeing those kinds of things. I mean, trust me when I tell you, it's the last thing that I ever wanted to be was like my father. But, a lot of people say it was the music industry. It had nothing to do with the music industry. I would have been an abusive drinker had I been a teacher or a dentist or anything of the sort. So I never want to give the music industry that kind of a rap. I think, contrarily, music is probably what ended up saving me. So, say what you will about the industry, but music was absolutely my saving grace throughout, any struggles that I ever had. But, luckily for me, I never did a drug in my life. I was very private about my drinking. I wasn't one of those people that were outwardly swinging around, and I wasn't drunk all the time. I was a binger. But that became very problematic. I could go 3 weeks, a month, 6 weeks and not drink at all. But then when I did, it was kind of an all or nothing. But I can be the type of person that wants to live the entirety of their life in one day. But like I said, I got tired of not being a person of my word and letting people down and letting myself down and not keeping promises and canceling things constantly. I'm surprised I, was able to keep working. But I was smart enough. I never, ever, ever drank on the job, ever. I had the sense to not do it. I never drank on stage. I never drank before work. But when I got off stage and when we were all on the bus, then it was kind of like a no holds barred situation. But I feel very fortunate that I finally was able to just disengage with that kind of a life. And drinking is a young man's game. Your hangovers get worse, and you just can't keep up physically. If you're prepared to be hungover for 4, 5, 6 days at a time. Sometimes it took me 2 weeks to feel better after a bender. And it was not sustainable. So I'm glad to be out of that. It's the best thing I ever did. That and going vegan. I did it at the same time. So,
did you?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So that whole concept of letting ourselves down at times, what is that all about for you guys when you when you say and you think of yourself that you let yourself down. Why would we ever do that? And what's going on inside when that happens? Any thoughts? Whenever, Ryan, you said you sometimes are disappointed in how your life's going or whatever. What's going on with this disappointing of self?
Well, I think for me, it's more of like a constant analysis, a constant assessment as to what I feel is working for me or helping me achieve my goals or helping me be a better person or how I want to be. So I think for me, I'm mostly thinking in terms of how I can improve. And so I think it's less from a feeling of disappointment.
So it's trying to be better and better yourself, etc. And can I ever ask, do we as people, do we spend more time analyzing our work or analyzing our life, our personal life?
I would say for me, it's both.
Okay.
I'm always assessing both, and I feel they're so intertwined. And I feel like when everything is balanced and healthy in my personal life, that helps my professional life, and vice versa. Like if things are disorganized in my professional life, then that can affect my personal life. So I don't know. I think maybe the fact that in this type of industry, we're so ingrained in it, it's really like who you are. Like when I'm writing music, I'm writing from a place of honesty, what's real. And that comes from me as a person. So I just feel as though everything is so intertwined, between personal balance and work balance, not just the balance between work life.
I liked what Ryan was saying there. Well, he broke up again there, but the honesty. And so when Jen, sorry that when you were broke up there, we just filled it in. But Jen, when you wrote Good Mother in 94-ish, were you struggling with addiction then?
I think alcohol was always a problem. It certainly ramped up, but yeah, I wasn't. Things were pretty good. It was just after I wrote Good Mother, actually, before I even got my record deal. So a friend of mine had given me a cassette tape with a chord progression on it that was really, really slow and nutty. And my 1976 Monte Carlo kept eating the cassette tape, so I kept having to carefully pull it out and wind it back in with a pencil. You go along and all of a sudden it's like, so I was desperately panicked about it, just like eating the tape and busting it. But no, it was very staggered. I was during that time I wasn't drinking at all. So from the time I was 26 or 27, I quit, and I was sober for 7 or 8 years. So early on in my career, I wasn't drinking at all, which was very serendipitous for me. But as far as your question about analyzing, I think is the word you used, your life, or
do you spend time?
None. I don't do any of that. I'm like the easiest person in the world. I think because I've been doing this for so long and I don't work for anybody, I think my parents even knew very early on, my God, what is she going to do for herself? And I think I knew as a teenager, I was just quite an intrepid person, and I didn't want to rely on anybody else. And so I don't. The work that I kind of ended up doing is kind of on my own terms, and I say no a lot more than I say yes. And I'm not afraid of failing at all. It has been one of the fundamentally most important aspects of my life is screwing up, and I'm epic at it. And for all the things that I seemingly get right outwardly, there's 10 projects that I have on the go that don't go so well, but I'm endlessly doing things that I'm not good at, and I don't have to be good at things to enjoy them. And I try and encourage people to do that all the time. I have a friend that's like, I wanted to take a pottery class, but I don't think I'd be good at it. And I'm like, well, that's why it's a pottery class, you Looney Tune. You're supposed to learn. And so that always breaks my heart about the arts, is that people feel like they have to have a level of, ability before they undertake things. And that's absolutely not the truth. I don't read music. I produce records and write really complicated things, but I don't read music. I can play piano and guitar, but I have no idea what I'm doing. So I just didn't learn. Just not the way I learned. So
you're just driving me bonkers here because I think everybody's like me in the sense that exposing my failures is not easy for me to do. And so what you're saying about yourself is makes me angry and so refreshing, because wouldn't it be nice to be like that? Like, Ryan, do you run to failures like Jan does?
I'm sorry, ask that again.
You run to failures and kind of enjoy failing like Jan just said?
I love what Jan said, Jan. I think that's amazing. I think I wish I were more like that, because I really like internalize things and I process them and I think about them over and over again. And sometimes I beat myself up, about, oh, why did I do that? Or why did I say that? I wish that I had more of that approach that Jan was mentioning, where I could just sort of not be as hard on myself and be accepting of it. But I'm not, I'm constantly analyzing and I'm constantly, assessing and figuring out. And actually, if I could ask you, Jan, if it's okay to ask,
go for it.
When you were mentioning that when you would drink, that it wouldn't be at work, and I totally get that, but maybe after the show when you're back in the bus and now it's time to relax. And so my question for you is, once you were finding a healthier balance for all of that, when you were back in the situations where you would normally want to drink, how did you feel at those times? So like you finished the show, it's like, okay, take a load off. That went great. We're back in the bus. That's when you'd want to relax in that way. So what would change in your mind to do something different?
I can't completely articulate what happened to my desire to pour that glass of wine, whatever. Keeping with the failure theme, I failed many times trying to quit drinking. I never went to AA. It was a very private, shameful thing that I kind of dealt with. I was home a lot alone, drinking. And I resented it. So I failed many times. I'd be sober for like a year and then think that I could go back and have a drink. And I think when my mom, who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's she started forgetting things at 72. By the time she was 75, she was diagnosed with full-blown Alzheimer's. And I was trying to look after her and I was trying to have a career. And one bottle would turn into 2 bottles of wine at night when I took her home. They lived 100 yards from my house. I had moved my parents onto my property. Longer story than it needs to be. But I think something happened to me one particular day, and I had really binged the night before. In fact, I remember opening a can of beer before I went to bed, and I drank half of it. And of course, I woke up at 3:30 in the morning, and my heart was racing, and I was just riddled with anxiety, and I was so disappointed in myself, and I needed to be up early to deal with my mom. And I knew that I was on a wheel, and I was 54 years old at that point. And I just thought, how long am I going to do this? And it had just felt like such a long battle with this thing. So anyway, 9-10 hours later, I ended up in emergency because my heart, I always had heart trouble in my life, like just from the time I was a kid, nothing seriously or mechanical, but rhythm problems. So I ended up in emergency and they kept me there for a couple of days. Nothing new. I'd been in the hospital many times with my heart. And this nurse, Nancy Clark, she was looking at my chart and she said, how much are you drinking? And I said, a lot. And she said, your heart doesn't like it. And she said, you just have to stop it, Jan. She goes, you just have to stop it. Just stop it. She goes, I don't know what else to tell you. That's the one thing that you need to do. And I never drank again. I don't know. I'm not a particularly religious person. I have zero desire. I have a wine cellar in my house with 600 bottles of wine sitting down there. And I give it away constantly when people come over here. I haven't had many people here in the last 2 years, but I used to be always picked away, Ryan. You're very right. It would pick away at me. And I'd end up finally just having a glass of wine that would turn into 3 glasses of wine, which I didn't think was that bad. I'm thinking, well, I only had 3 glasses of wine, but you realize how demented your thinking is, that 3 drinks, well, I wasn't blacking out. Like, that's how I was rationalizing things. So this last time, it's gone out of my body, and I feel very observed by a very supportive universe. I feel my parents around me. I just feel like that part of my life is done.
Good for you.
I couldn't have done it at 39. I could have done it, at 45. But at 54, I was just about to turn 55. I thought, that's the end of it. And I feel like I have my life back for the first time in 30 years.
Wow.
Goodness.
I talk to people as a career and et cetera, and I never stop being amazed, how we come to this place of reckoning of how we have rationalized thinking or whatever for years, and all of a sudden there's stages of life in which we allow the light or someone's words to seep through the veil of the smoke and mirrors, and all of a sudden things become clear. So, I mean, Ryan, you and me just kind of, we can identify in saying we analyze things and we look at things but we know that's not helpful sometimes. And we all kind of saying, Jan, I need to be a little bit more like Jan.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, other than wearing the cool hat, I mean, is able to not be afraid of failure. And
I don't know why anyone would be afraid of not getting it right. If there was any reason at all for us to be on the planet, and I feel like music teaches me that all the time, is that, I'll give you an example, because I don't read music, but a really, really very, very well-known Nashville writer, he said to me one day when we were recording very early on, I had a song called I Would Die For You, and he came up to me and he said, do you know that this goes from 3/4 time to 4/4 time? And I had no idea what he was talking about. He said, this technically shouldn't work. He says, it just feels like you're getting pulled. And he said, it works perfectly. He's like, don't ever learn how to read music, is what he said to me that day. He said, don't ever learn. He said, because I was taught, and this was in the early 90s, and he was in his 60s at that time. And he just said, don't ever learn to read music, because he said, you won't do things like this. He said, you just won't. You'll make decisions based on what's technically applicable and what makes sense. But he said, this made no sense to me. And he said, it's just a lovely thing that happens within the song. But I don't know. So I guess that would have been construed as a failure, but it was a happy accident. And isn't that how most of the wonderful things in the world come to light? They always talk about, different drugs. Well, we initially did this drug to help people to stop smoking, and it turns out it makes your hair grow. Like, it's always like these weird things that happen. Science, nature shows us all the time things that shouldn't work that they do. Like, I don't know. It just, I think once you let go and give into the endless possibility of being on this little tiny speck blasting through the universe, it shouldn't be. That shouldn't even be. We can't find any other life around us, and we're in a universe that is endlessly expanding. And yet here we are on this tiny thing. Everything amazes me now. And I do have such a desire to live. And I think that was a big step for me too, is like, I want to be here. I want to know what this is, but I'm not afraid of dying at all. That's not the point either. But I just am so interested in what this is.
Sorry, Kim, do you want to say something?
No, go ahead.
Jan, I love that about, the music part of it. I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's funny. I find that music, functions in a lot of different ways. It can be an intellectual thing, but I think by and large, music is an emotional art form, and it resonates with people on an emotional level. And I think that, I think what that producer was saying is the song that you wrote that changes time signature like that. It works because it feels right. And so that's all that's really required, and then the analysis of it is the analysis of it. And I think that he was saying, don't bother to learn it some other way, because the important thing is that what you're writing resonates emotionally. And it obviously, was. So it's funny because I come from a very trained standpoint, training.
Yeah, and going back to that, it's the little bit that I do know about music, and someone has probably said this, and I've stolen it from it, so don't quote me as from me. But music happens between the notes, and the magic happens between the notes, and it translates into something that resonates within our souls and our thoughts and our feelings and our passions, and so. Can we go back and talk about that in terms of your art form, both of you? That are you able to be artists without being honest? You said that was part of your keeping balance, Ryan, in your life, and that you need to keep from a good mother, your feet on the ground, your heart in hand kind of thing. That kind of living life balanced. How do people keep you honest? How do you stay honest with yourself? Well, a lot of the music work that I do is writing music for film and television and storytelling. And so in that context, one of the biggest roles of music is to help the story come through clearly and to make all the emotions feel real. It was the same thing the actors are doing. Everyone's trying to tell a story in a genuine way that resonates with an audience. And so, to answer the question, it's definitely possible to create music from a place that's not honest, but it may not be great. I find that for something to really resonate and to feel real, it should come from a place. Well, I'll say this: it should at least feel real to me. It has to start with at least feeling real to myself, and from there, I hope it might resonate with others. There are probably instances where I wrote something that I'm not sure if I fully felt it, but I thought that's what the story wanted, and people were happy. But for the most part, it needs to start with something that feels true to myself, and in that regard, I feel as though it's really important. This is something I learned later after, studying in school and living some life, was that I think it's really important to have life experiences, because, the richer a life you have, the more experiences, the more knowledge, the more traveling you've done, the more people you've spoken with, it informs you as a person. You grow and you grow as a musician as well, as an artist. I know that when I was younger, I used to go on to projects, and I would put so much pressure on myself that I would want to start a project at one level of being an artist. And then maybe by the time I'm done with that project, I hope that I've grown into, something greater. But what I've learned is that
there's enough pressure in just creating, just creating music or creating whatever you might be creating. And to add all that additional pressure on to think like, oh, well, maybe I could grow and be 2 times the artist that I was when I started. Wow, that's a lot of additional pressure to be putting on the podcast. And so what I started realizing was, I look at each project as being more of a snapshot as to where I am currently in my growth and life and artistry. And just to do what feels comfortable for me to do. Of course, I'm going to push myself and grow too, but I reserve the feeling of real larger growth as to what I try and do between the projects. And that's just by living life, studying music, listening, talking, experiencing, living, and having hobbies that are outside of music. Everything informs everything. So I try and keep some well-roundedness in order to have that truth and honesty that when I'm writing, there's somewhere I'm drawing from something in order to put it into the music.
I like that. Has success? Well, Jan really answered this question. I had this. I thought it was a wonderful question when preparing for this, and now I'm not so sure. I think I was probably fooling myself, but now that Jan has told me how she approaches it, but I'm wondering, has success taught you as much as failure has?
It depends what your idea of success is. Success for me has nothing to do with music. It has nothing to do with my career. It has nothing to do with it. But I also know that because time's gone by, I am such a different person than I was when I was 25 or 35 or even 5 years ago. So I know that has nothing to do with it. I enjoy it. I like doing it. The stage isn't my life. I learned that through COVID. I traveled 250 days a year. I'm one of those people that just doesn't stop working, but I've stopped now just because I had to. And then I was just like, oh my God. This is so nice because I live out in the sticks. I'm single. I've been single since I quit drinking. Oh, surprise, surprise. And, I'm just out here I had a bear, a fox, and a skunk just on my deck the other night, like filming these knuckleheads out there looking to see if there was any bird seeds left. So I thought I would rather do this. And I've never been like that about performing. I really like it when I'm in the moment. It's like going to school. I loved it when I was there, and then I just didn't think about it. I would rather have been playing out in the field. But my friendships have been my greatest triumph, my health and my well-being and the ability to think. And, music for me obviously has helped me. I've been able to monetize a certain part of my thinking process that I really, really enjoy. Writing's my favorite part. Love it. Still love it to this day. Love recording. Love it, love it, love it. I find it so interesting and so educational and so rewarding to be in a collaborative thing with everyone, the drummers doing its own thing. And, everyone's doing their thing to add to a piece of music. And Ryan can certainly attest to that magical part of composing something and having it in your mind and getting it out of your head and having people making it soar, and it just makes the skin stand up on your arms. But yeah, my success is so it's just being well and being empathetic towards others and being part of my community and being involved in animal welfare. And that's what really makes me tick. Music will always be important to me. But it's a means to support my other life that I've created. And that's just with time. You couldn't have stopped me in my 20s from playing guitar. I was obsessed. I did it all day long. I wrote 3, 4, 5 really shitty songs every day. Terrible songs that I hope never see the light of day. But I was determined to learn. I've probably written 1,500 songs in my life. 1,455 are really terrible and should never be heard by human beings. But I really learned, I just learned.
Can you let me drill back down, because I really am interested. So what you're saying is is that success changed over time.
Yes.
The definition. And now success to you is defined as?
I think personal happiness, my friendships. I have really good friends. I have friends now that I've known for 50 years. 50 years. I lost my dog a month ago. And I'll say this without any hesitation. She was almost 13. She's a 5-pound dog. I got her from my last lengthy relationship, and I would have left. I left everything except the dog. I got the dog. And I would have gotten lawyers. I would have done anything. But the dog, she came with me. And in my bereft, the first 2 weeks were just like a write-off. I was very grateful to be working because I was right in the middle of mixing a record, and I still feel like I'm missing something everywhere I go. And she was my joy. I would have gladly stood in front of anyone and said, I don't ever need to sing again or write a song again. I'll give it all up for her. And I think what I learned in that moment, which was quite desperate and very dramatic, and I probably didn't really mean that in a larger sense, but that's how I felt in the moment, was that little 5-pound dog made me the most unselfish version of myself. That and my mom who had Alzheimer's. I actually learned how to set myself aside and put other people and other things ahead of me. And like Ryan touched on it, we're in an industry that can be very self-serving. And, venturing into television this last 3 years has made that kind of even worse for me on some level, because I can't explain it. My goal is never to be known. It's just like to do the work. But when you do work in a public thing, it's a byproduct of it. And I think that's why I live in the middle of nowhere, because I really don't see anybody out here. But anyway, I'm sorry to ramble, but that little dog was my happiness. That's what made me happy.
And I like the word you use, because it's much different than happy, is the joy. Mm-hmm. Joy seems to be more pure, but that is an interesting aspect of when we stop thinking about ourselves. In other words, from a mental health perspective, we get in all kinds of troubles when we're thinking about ourselves. It's also true if all we're doing is thinking about what other people are thinking about us. But if we get this, not taking ourselves too seriously is a very healthy thing. And we might even find joy if we can learn to give the gift of ourselves to someone else.
And I know what you mean, Jen. With our industry, my interest is in the music. It has always been in the music. That's what
me too.
But in order to work, there's this whole other aspect, which is, people have to know you're around, and people have to, be aware that you can do things.
If you're not appearing, you're disappearing, right, Ryan?
Yeah. And so that's something that I sort of battle with that, which is, I like people. I'm a very empathetic person, which probably lends really well to the type of work that I do of telling stories, because I can relate to the stories. But at the same time, I'm not a particularly flashy person. Like I guess I'm a little more private in that way, and I battle with that, because in our industry, you can't just sort of be a hermit. It's like people have to know you're around. And so finding that balance is something that I constantly, I would say, struggling with. Like I see there are other people that promote much more heavily and, or really enjoy the spotlight, and, I'm not sure what their motivations are, but I never set out, I never wanted to be famous. I just enjoy the work. But in order to work, you sort of have to create some awareness of yourself.
Yeah, with success comes that. But I know what you mean. The way people even curate their social media is very telling, because I have the most boring Instagram on the planet. I'm very proud. I should be awarded the most boring Instagram ever, because it's my road, it's deer, it's a pair of rubber boots, it's it's just pathetic. And when I have to promote the show, they'll send me assets and I'll type in there, on Monday nights at 7, but it's all in good fun. And I look at some, women and men, I look at these lives and I'm like, this life doesn't even exist. So, and if this is the life they aspire to, it has nothing to do with anything. It just feels profoundly sad. So I'm happy to hear you say, Ryan, that that you are not curating someone that doesn't exist, because then I think the artist and their art misses out on what the opportunity is. And I think your job, very similar to mine, is monetizing your intellect, monetizing your ideas, your whimsy, your dreams, your imagination, and putting that out there to inspire other people to ignite their imaginations. And how many times have I sat in a movie and listened to soundtracks, Ryan, and left feeling so inspired? I don't know the composer all the time. Sometimes I'll wait till the end to see if it's, one of the usual suspects.
Right.
But there seems to be like 10 guys that seem to get those big movies all the time. But you do build on your catalog, and that's what you're doing. You're curating that catalog. And I don't think you have to be flashy. I think you can be the most hidden away gem. I think your work just speaks so highly for itself, and people, that's what they want from you, is your heart.
And I have lessons to learn from this, because if you go to my Instagram page, it's mostly promoting projects, because I feel like, I'll just promote the work side of it. And I feel like, would anyone be interested to even know what I'm doing in my personal life? But
it should be about what you're interested in. It should be what you're interested in. I mean, if it's a bug on a leaf or something, I'm always trying to tell people it would be so cool to see what your life is actually doing.
My life is playing Words with Friends. I'm playing backgammon. I'm watching YouTube videos.
I think that's great. I mean, we've seen so much social media gone mad this last couple of years, especially, and now Facebook is finding itself in hot water for studies that they did that adversely affected young women, and that they found that even just the average Joe like us, looking at news stories that were adversarial, filled with hate, filled with vitriol, that they got more clicks and more attention, and therefore Facebook made more money. And they knew that, but they curated that forum and that ideology. They just kept going in that direction. So I think they're finally being called out on it. I'm very disinterested in that. But like you, my Facebook, my office does it. I don't even do it. And it's all promoting the show, but they also know my heart, and they know me very well, and they know of what not to put on there. And I'm very mindful. I try and strike a balance. Yeah. So I'm going to go on your Instagram page, Ryan, and I'm going to start following you.
Well, please do. But if you want to play Words with Friends, let's connect on there.
I've never played it before. I guess I'll try and do it with you.
I feel like if I were promoting, I could spend hours on like an educational tear on Wikipedia, and just click from article to article and learn and learn. I love that. These are the things I enjoy, and I think it would make terrible social media posts.
Well, and I think that once again, the assumption is the social media probably is trying to, this is really presumptuous and judgmental, but probably you'll get the teens and the 20-year-olds, but is that who you're really trying to speak to anyway? And I
think mine are all aging crone women who I love, somebody's grandmothers, and a bunch of gay guys. Like, I think that's my Instagram. I've never been happier. It took me years to get my fan base all sorted out.
That's a good fan base, by the way. That's
it is.
That's an enjoyable, loyal fan base.
You would really love that, eh?
It is magical. People have supported me to the ends of the world, and I'm so grateful. Like, I don't even know what to say. There's people that I know by name. I've been touring almost 40 years. And this is when you guys are supposed to say, "Oh my God, how is that possible? You don't look that way." But anyway, you missed your opportunity. No, thank you, Ryan. You're too late. So anyway,
it's true.
We'll fix it in post, and we'll get that reaction in.
I'm not playing words with friends with you now, Ryan. So I'll look out into like the first 3 or 4 rows, and I'm like, I recognize 80 people in the first 3 rows.
I don't
because
doubt that.
they've been to tens. They've been to a 200 shows. And I've even said to them, because they can direct message you now. People can talk to you. It's up to you whether you respond or not. But I'm just like, aren't you sick of these shows? No. I'm like, well, do you want to request a song? And it's usually some obscure thing, but I try and be as open and as interactive as my mind will allow me to. I don't know, because
So can you separate, do they love your work or do they love you?
I hope. Well, here's a good story for you. I'll make it short. I was sitting having a coffee about 10 years ago, and I was in an outdoor cafe, and it was a quiet day, and this kid went by me in a skateboard, and he went flying by me, and then he flipped his board up. He came back, and he looked at me, and he goes, "You're that chick that sings Insensitive." And I was like, do I say? So I said, yes, I am. He goes, "I hate your music, but I really like you." And so I learned a lesson that day. It's possible. He was able to separate it out. He's like, I hate your music, but I like you. You're cool. See ya. Bye.
Just enjoy that little tidbit of information. Go on.
I mean, he was 30 something and just long dreadlock hair. Nobody that should even know who I am.
So the fact that he's commenting that he likes you must indicate that enough of you is getting out there beyond your music for him to know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It makes me smile when I think about it. And people are very kind. People are kind.
Yeah.
Well, they are. But one of the things, if I can just feedback, I mean, we've never talked in our lives before, and I listened to both of you today. And I just want to say, Jan, one of the gifts you give us, apart from your music, is you seem like a person who has learned how to live in the present. And thank you for that. For me, I tend to live in the future. I'm planning, I'm organizing, I prepare, I think of the future, and others tend to live in the past, and they're fearful or whatever, and we're all trying to do this hard job of living present, because life is now and it's not going tomorrow, and I think you're really refreshing with that. And I want to thank you guys for that. The other thing is that as Jan has said, Ryan, the music for both of you, the music has touched areas in all of our lives and resonated in our souls that have transcended us from this world to other worlds. And it changes us. Your music and your work has changed us and me, and that is, you guys are salt and light and gifts to all of us. But today, more than anything, I want to thank you for the gift of vulnerability, and in like manner, as music touches our souls, I think your truth has really resonated with me, and I'm sure others, and it's making us more secure, more accepted, more human, and more okay. And thank you for giving. I think that the gift of vulnerability is one of the greatest things we can ever give. And I want to thank you guys. I know you're busy, and for this time, and for sharing.
Well, I did this because I thought we were getting a free T-shirt, but I don't know.
Well, we can arrange that, and it will have Ryan's Instagram on it, and
when I really appreciate being here. It's always nice to meet new people, and like I said, if 3 of us can sit here and have a conversation without ever having met before, I hope people understand that that's how easy it is in life to understand that anyone that you're walking by, you could have a conversation with. And the only way this is going to work is if we care about people we don't know. It's very easy to care and love the people that we know, the cousins and the aunts and the people that are in our inner circle. But in order for this to work, and in order for that divide to suddenly stop being this chasm of misunderstanding and misinformation, we have to care about people we don't know. And I consider you guys friends, and I hope we stay in touch as we go forward.
Thank you.
And, the last word from my dad, as far as staying in the present, he said, Jan, you can't live in a house that's not made, that's not built. So as much as he was an alcoholic, he left me with some really interesting slogans. He was the slogan guy. But you can't live in a house that's not built. I no more care about what's 2 days from now than I just don't. The furthest I get along is if I've had breakfast, I'm wondering what lunch is. That's what COVID has done to me. And once I've had lunch, I'm like, what? Do I still have popcorn in the house? I mean, that's as far forward as I'm thinking. So, but thank both of you for honestly, I've really enjoyed the conversation, and it's left me with lots of things to think of. So.
Well, and let's put that challenge out. At least the three of us. Let's take on Jan's challenge, and someone today is going to get love that we don't even know yet. And let's take that on.
I wholeheartedly agree. It's really well said, and I feel like there is, I think, empathy and being able to understand other people and try to understand and find commonality, as we have all done, on this chat, which I love. I love the expression that there is no them, there's only us. And that's empathy, and I agree. I love chatting with
it's absolute truth, Ryan. Absolute truth.
And we're all connected, and we all belong to one another. And there, as individuals, when we're in our youth, we're all trying to create the independent individual. But as we grow up, we realize that it's interdependent, it's connectedness that brings us meaning, and it becomes the orchestra that makes the skin pop from our and just. It's incredible whenever we are all together, working together. And so, I love it. I love it as well. All the best in your work and in your life.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks to you both.